Hi, it's Adil Zanulbhai again for the next version of our Karmayogi Talks. I am very, very delighted today that we have Mr. Sunil Barthwal, who is a Secretary for Commerce and Industry, to talk to us about India trade. This is a subject that I think every civil servant needs to understand what India is doing on trade, what its trade is, and how it interacts with the rest of the world on trade. And there is no better person to talk about this than Sunil Barthwal. He's an IS officer of the Bihar cadre. He's got a postgraduate in economics, honors in economics from St. Stephen's, MA in economics from JNU, PG diploma in economics and competition law from King's College, London, and he has worked in finance, social security, investment, infrastructure, mines, steel, energy, labor, both at the government and a state level. And I think what that has allowed Sunil to do is to get a very wide view of not just the Indian economy, the global economy, and how the Indian economy interacts with the world on trade. He took charge as Commerce Secretary with effect from 30th September 2022. So he's been there for 2 years, which is enough time, I think, to get your arms around everything and enough time to set the policies and direction for India's trade policy. So with that, Sunil, we are very, very delighted that you could join us today for this talk. As you know, a very large number of people tune into these talks to get a basic view of different subjects. And trade and industry is something that I think a very large number of people are very interested in. So I wonder if I could start you off, Sunil, with, going back a little bit in history. When India got its independence 75 years ago, what was trade like? How important was it to the economy? What did it look like? And then how has it evolved over time? Obviously, it's a much larger percentage of GDP today than then. The nature of trade is different, but it would really be great if you took us back to what was it like and what were the major turning points and changes in India's trade since then. Thank you.
Thank you, Adil. Let me first of all express my gratitude for giving me this opportunity. I think through your platform, I would be able to, catch the attention of so many people. And I really commend you as well as your organization for doing extremely well. I think this is a very, very important question which you asked. And I think that's a good starting point, that where we were and where we are today. In fact, if you look at the whole trade journey of India, you will find that you can divide it into three different phases. The first phase, of course, as you rightly pointed out, after independence and before that was the stage of pre-liberalization. 91 was the year when liberalization in India started, and that is how trade policies and perspective changed entirely. And the current phase, which is the last decade, where we are visioning exercise. So let me come to the first phase, when we got independence. Of course, you would remember that India during the ancient period in the Indus Valley civilization, we were known as a trading nation, big trading nation. We had established roots with Europe, with Asia, with Africa, and we were also part of the Silk Route. But of course, the long period of subjugation that weakened our economic structure. And when we became independent in 1947, the situation was that we were a weak industrial nation in terms of the industrial capacities. We were still agricultural economy, and our trade policies were also reflect the same situation. If you look at our trade policies, they were inward looking. In fact, a lot of economists say that we believed in export pessimism during that period of time. We looked at the world as if we have to protect our industries from the world. and we were growing. So there was an infant industry argument that our industry needs to be protected. So that was the regime of protectionism, that was the regime of regulation, that was the regime of licensing. In fact, there were a lot of issues with respect to the availability of foreign exchange. And many times the import licenses which were given were based on how to ration the foreign exchange within the country. So that was a regime when, although we were putting a focus on industrialization, on capital goods industry, but at the same time, we were also cognizant of the fact that we need to protect our industry. And that is how this export pessimism emerged at that point of time. And that is also known as, the economy, which believed in regulation and licensing. So that was highly protective regime. There was some focus in terms of exports, and I would say that agriculture exports were the major items where we focused at that point of time. And some of the commodity boards in India, those were established during that particular period. So, but from the industrial point of view, from the large scale industries, from the high tech industry, I think that was not the period which is remembered. Come to liberalization phase, that is 91, and we looked at the different control regimes. We dismantled that control regime, and if you look at what happened in the trade field, we also reduced our tariffs because we had created a high tariff wall, and we started with the reduction of the tariff rates. If you look at, this is an interesting fact, if you look at the import tariffs, it was around, top tariff rate was around 355% in 1991. And we got it reduced, although still very high, but 150% in 91, 92. But that was a beginning of moving towards an open trade policy. We dismantled our import licensing system. We virtually, in fact, if you look at all the intermediate products and capital goods, import licensing was removed, except for the consumer goods sectors, finished goods. There was some licensing requirements, but otherwise this licensing requirement was removed. And another interesting fact you would be very much interested in knowing is that, the current DGFT, the Director General of Foreign Trade, that was called the Chief Controller of Imports and Exports at that point of time, because that was controlling all the export and import in the country. They were the ones who were providing licenses. They were the ones who were looking at what is happening to the foreign exchange. Now that role post-liberalization completely changed. And DGFT then became more of a facilitator, more of, provider of schemes, provider of giving a level playing field to the exporters. So there was a whole conceptual change from the pre-liberalization to post-liberalization. Now we have entered the third phase, Adil, and that third phase is of, when we are looking at India as one of the fastest growing economies continuously for quite some time. And we are also visioning ourselves as to become the developed nation by 2047. We are already among the top 5 largest nations of the world, and we are looking forward to becoming 3 largest very soon. And this visioning exercise for 2047, when we achieve our 100 years, because this whole journey is from independence to 100 years of our independence, we are looking forward to India becoming Viksit Bharat, a developed nation. And for becoming Viksit Bharat, a lot of policy initiatives and the vision which has come about regarding the trade is also that how we can open up our economy to the globe, how we can have better integration with the global world. and how India is looking at our relationship in terms of trade and economic partnership with the countries. This third phase is the phase of optimism, where we are looking at trade as the real engine of growth, where we are looking at trade as something which builds economic relationship with other countries. We are looking at trade which will allow us to grow as become part of the global value chains and reach the high levels in the global value chains. So this third phase is going to be the phase of optimism for the country, and we are looking at this phase as a phase when maximum will be realized in terms of not only trade growth but economic partnerships with various countries. So I will stop here. Thank you.
Sunil, you've given us a very good view of how things have changed. Can I ask you to comment a little bit on what is the state of global trade today? It has grown a lot, it has globalized, but what is the state today, and what is India's role in it? For example, India is still a relatively small part of the global trade, but what are the areas in which India excels today in exports? And what role does it therefore play in global trade?
Right. So if you look at the global trade today, it is there are a lot of trends which are mega trends which are visible. So, for example, if you look at the global trade today, it is very different from the Ricardian world, which existed several hundred years back. And this is a world where the value chains are integrated. Value chains are across various countries. Multinationals are operating. Multinational trade is almost close to 70% of the total global trade. Intra-firm and inter-firm trade is very, very high. A single product, except for agriculture, which is maybe wholly obtained, most of the manufactured products are part of the value chain system, where raw material comes from one country, intermediate products comes from another country, and finishing takes place in a third country. In fact, large number of countries, if you look at, are integrated in this value chain. So that is one aspect which we need to look at if you want to understand the current global trade situation. At the same time, post-COVID, there has been a realization that perhaps the value chains need to be more resilient. It is not a good idea to keep all eggs in one basket. And there is a whole focus of various countries which is coming at building these resilient value chains. The third mega trend which you can look at is regarding the needs for reindustrialization by some of the developed world. We used to think that developing countries only require industrialization. But some of the countries, even in the Western world, they have realized that perhaps to provide jobs within those countries, they also need to focus on some of the manufacturing sectors. Also, although they have gone into the high-tech sectors, but still they feel that automobiles is important to them. And phase perhaps is regarding the energy transition. If you look at the mega trend, that relates to the energy transition commitments which have been given by the countries. They have been agreed in the Paris Climate Agreement. Every country has taken their voluntary commitment. Most of the countries have taken commitments for 2050. And they are looking at this energy transition from that perspective of reaching that net zero goal. This energy transition is a major change maker, I would say, in the whole manufacturing system, because automobiles are moving from IC engines to EV batteries. The fossil fuel is moving towards green energy sources, whether it is wind or whether it is solar. And people are looking for other avenues of reducing carbon emissions, whether it is green hydrogen or other ways of reducing carbon footprints. So these trends are the trends which also pose some kind of challenges to our policies in terms of trade, but also at the same time, these trends also provide opportunities for us to focus on some of these sectors. Another trend which you would like to see, and which is very, very important for all of us to understand, is that services sector is growing at a very, very fast rate. Servicification of manufacturing is also happening at a very fast rate. In fact, in some of the industries, the service part has reached almost 50%. So today, if you are looking at manufacturing, you cannot miss out on services. And that is a big trend which is driving global trade. And if you look at global trade today, although the share of services may not be as big as the merchandise trade, but services trade is growing at a very, very fast rate for most of the countries. And India, thankfully, is part of that services supply chain, very important part of services supply chain. And we feel that that is the major role which India will play in the global trade. Of course, global trade has also been impacted due to a lot of disruptions which happened due to conflicts in Europe, in Asia, and there were disruption in sea routes. Transportation costs have increased. Merchandise trade has become difficult to do and costly to do. Insurance costs have gone up. So, in one sense, and in fact, if you look at post-COVID period, you will also find that some of the countries, they looked at their monetary policies from in the sense that they wanted to reduce inflation, and therefore monetary expansion became less, and consequently the demand for merchandise goods also slowed down. So if you look at global trade, there was a slowing down in the global trade for some period of time, but now the forecasts are that it will improve over a period of time. And most importantly, there is no worry regarding the services trade, where India has a good footprint. And I feel that that is an area where we need to focus. If you look at our merchandise export baskets, that has also changed. In fact, we are finished goods basket is about 47.6%, and capital goods is about 18.9%, which forms 66.5% of India's merchandise exports. Our engineering goods are doing extremely well, and you are aware of the fact that our ITS services are the backbone of the services growth for the whole of the world. And if you look at India in terms of the GDC participation, it has also improved over a period of time. And we are looking at globe in terms of better opportunities, but we are also cognizant of the fact that there will be challenges which are coming in the form of certain protectionist measures by several countries. There will be challenges with respect to countries looking at energy transition from the protectionist point of view. And you are aware of the fact that these carbon border adjustment mechanism by a few countries, the sustainability issues by other countries, and these are the issues which perhaps are bringing in an element of protectionism from the Western world. So we have to gear up ourselves in a manner in which we are able to cross these hurdles and able to export more, both merchandise goods as well as our services.
Thank you, Sunil. That's a good exposition of where we are. When you talk about trade, we always come up against these things like WTO, FTAs, free trade areas, PTAs, and as we and you know we India signed many of these. Can you comment on, as we think about our trade policy, where are we today in terms of global agreements, sector, agreements with different countries, FTAs, etc. Can you just clarify what those are and where is India today?
Yes, Adil, I think this is a very, very important issue these days. And if you look at our economic integration, so our economic integration with the world, our growth of trade with the world, tariffs was one instrument. And now, with the WTO, of course, in WTO, the MFN principle rules, which means that you have to have the same tariffs for all the countries. There cannot be a discrimination between two countries. That is the MFN rule. But WTO rules also allow that for the greater liberalization of trade among the countries, they also allow that you can go for these free trade agreements. Earlier, these were called the preferential trade agreements. Now, these are also being called the comprehensive economic partnership agreements. And I would like to speak on that because these are the different changing facets of these bilateral agreements. So you are right that not only the multilateral world, where there are a lot of regional agreements and multilateral agreements which are taking the trade forward. One very important instrument for taking trade forward is these PTAs, FTAs, and comprehensive economic partnership agreements. We are now a much more open economy. In fact, if you look at our trade in terms of GDP, it is quite high. And India is looked as a very open economy. India is also looked at as an economy where a lot of countries want to do free trade agreements. In fact, every day there are a lot of requests which come to us, and we only say that we can only take up so much and we can't take up more, because that is very time consuming and resource consuming process. In terms of our FTAs, PTAs, and the SEPA agreements, let me see that the journey has been that earlier these were the preferential trade agreements which were confined to goods trade, and these were the limited trade agreements which we did with most of our neighbors, ASEAN, and other countries. And gradually, the thinking came that since services trade is also increasing, so these trade agreements should be involving more sectors and should not only be confined to the goods sector alone. So we went into these services agreements. And now if you look at the comprehensive economic partnership agreements, which we are negotiating with EU, with UK, and which we have done successfully with UAE and the early harvest with Australia, you will find that these are more complex kind of agreements. They go beyond goods, they go beyond services. They include investment chapters or investment treaties along with these FTAs. They also get into the issues related to the trade facilitation. They also talk about the regulatory ecosystem of two partner countries, so that there is a greater harmonization of regulatory ecosystem. They talk about the pre and post establishment investment conditions. They talk about more liberalized FDI policies and regulations. So I think now if you look at the comprehensive economic partnership agreements, which we are now negotiating with the developed world, you will find that these are very complex kind of agreements. And but these agreements, once happen, they will bring a lot of economic integration among the partner countries. And since it is very wide, it goes beyond simple trade. It leads to more economic integration and trade, because the concept is that both trade and investment are important, just not trade. And for MNCs to work through the global supply chains, it requires both trading as well as investment. And so we are getting into that mode. We are very open to these new form of free trade agreements, and we feel that this is the way forward when we can integrate with the world. In addition to these bilaterals, I would also like to tell Adil that we are also focusing on certain multilateral or plurilateral trade agreements. Recently, we signed uh, one plurilateral agreement with in IPF, which was led by US, and there were total 14 countries involved of Asia Pac. And this integration is related to what will be the clean economy transition for these countries and how technology and investment will flow. What will be the fair economy part so that more ecosystem is much better in terms of doing trade and investment. And we are also looking at how to improve the resiliency in the value chain system. So these multilateral agreements are also we are signing. We have recently signed one plurilateral agreement with EFTA countries, where the 4 countries are involved. And you would be very happy to know that India is now pioneering in terms of uh, looking at how both the strengths of the 2 countries and the 2 partners, as well as the sensitivities of the 2 countries and 2 partners, can be taken into account. In fact, it has happened for the first time in the history of any FTA in the world that the FTA which we have done with EFTA countries, where Switzerland is involved, Iceland and Norway and Liechtenstein is involved. We have taken commitments from this group for about $100 billion of investment in India. Although BIT has not been signed, that is a separate part. But they have recognized this important fact that to do trade with India, they are willing to take commitments of $100 billion over 15 years period to invest in India. And we have also built mechanisms by which it will be ensured over a period of time. And so trade and investment will go hand in hand. Similarly, if you look at the way negotiations are going on with the EU and with the UK, we are looking for much better value chain integration with these partner countries. We are also looking at how not only the tariffs are reduced, but also the non-tariff barriers. They are also reduced, and there is better economic regulatory harmonization between the partner countries, so that there is a better economic integration. So if you look at the way India is now doing these FTAs, they are much deeper. They are they encompass many more areas. Let me tell you that more than 20 chapters are involved in some of these SEPA agreements. And sometimes, people feel that why they take so much time. The point is that these are much deeper, much larger, much broader, much more complex agreements which we are doing. Because if we want a better integration with the world, these are very, very important. And we are looking at our strengths, we are looking at our sensitivities. In fact, it is always our endeavor to see that as a developing world, the developed and the developing world cannot be equated. We always tell the developed countries that there is CBDRRC principle, that is common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities, is one principle which should be acknowledged between the countries when these bilateral or plurilateral or multilateral agreements are signed. But I'm sure that the way we are strategizing these agreements and these partnerships, India is going to gain and the world is going to gain. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Sunil. as we look over the next decade and the next 2 decades, as we evolve towards Viksit Bharat, how do you see India's role in global trade changing, especially given the recent geopolitical changes both in Europe and Asia, and how some of the other countries are behaving? So, what will it? We've seen how it looks like in the past. We've seen how it looks like today. How is it going to look like over the next decade?
Yes, so I think this is the question which we are addressing in our what I call the third phase of uh, trade policies, where we are doing a visioning exercise for our 100 years of independence. What should be the India's role in the global trade? Where India stands in terms of gaining from the global trade? How India should move up in the value chains? How we should be able to create employment for our youth? How we should be able to look at a very significant now STEM professionals, uh, science, technology, engineering, and maths professionals who are driving the GCCs in India, and how the R&D focus is coming towards India. And we feel that India is currently, a country which a lot of people want to do friend shoring with. And this concept of friend shoring, that you should be having trusted partners. The whole globe has realized that India, being a democratic country, India with a country of 1.4 billion youth, India, a very young country, India is going to be the one where the future manufacturing and services will emerge. We are also looking at not only in terms of traditional sectors. Of course, certain sectors are very, very important to us from the perspective of generation of employment for our youth in the rural areas as well as in the urban areas. And labor-intensive sectors like textiles, leather are very important to us. Agriculture and food processing. A lot of things are happening in terms of our exports of agri-processed products. So what I feel is that India is looking at the world from that perspective. And the world is also looking at India from a different perspective now. If you look at the world, they feel that if value chains have to be diversified, if IPR regime has to be protected, if technologies are to be kept in the safe hands, then India is a place where they should be investing. India is a place where the company should be going. India is a place where manufacturing should be happening. So this has given us a very good possibility of moving into and better integration into the value chains. Of course, we have also realized that maybe we may start with the assembly. For example, if you look at what has happened in the electronics sector, we started with the assembly because that is labor intensive, but gradually we are moving towards component manufacturing. And we understand that how to look at the value chain from that perspective, where it is not only the gain to the company or the multinational which is investing in the country, but also gain in terms of diversifying the global value chain. That is going to be important for us. If you look at our export basket, in fact, 1/4 of our export basket is the engineering products. So world is recognizing that India is becoming a hub, not only for R&D, but also for going in the high-tech sectors. We have moved into many high-tech sectors, whether it is electronics, whether it is automobiles, whether it is green hydrogen, the solar, modules, and other kinds of energy technologies. So India is playing a very, very important role in terms of leading to the diversification of the value chains and the concentration away from few geographies, so that post-COVID, during COVID we realized that value chains have to be more diversified. During the period of crisis, one geography should not be holding the complete value chain to problems. So I think this is the new realization which is coming in the world, and that is how we are looking at our prowess in terms of moving forward. In green transition also, India is very, very committed. We have taken commitments for net zero by 2070. We are also looking at partners with respect to moving forward in the green transition technologies with US as well as with the EU. We have bilateral forums where we are looking at these critical and emerging technologies. We are also looking at how better we can integrate in terms of critical mineral, critical technologies. So I think the whole range of the futuristic industries of the world we are looking at. We are also looking at the AI ecosystem and what role India can play. We are establishing data centers in India. The global capability centers are being established in India. R&D is happening in India. And I think if you look at the whole value chain from this perspective, India is going to play a very, very major role, not only in services sector, which we already are, but also in the manufacturing sector. Thank you.
Sunil, just if I can ask you to comment a little bit more on software and services, where India is. I think we have $250 billion of exports a year out of India. And I think, if we are going to grow exports, as you have said, to $2 trillion out of India, services will, of course, play a big part. Can you talk about where it has been a huge success and what are some of the areas in which we are going to hope to grow services some more?
Yes. So I think, as I mentioned, that services global trade is increasing. If you look at services closely, you will also find another phenomena. That is that digitally delivered services is increasing, because now more and more services can be delivered digitally. One good thing about the services trade is that it is not impacted so much by disruption in the sea routes or transportation, because these are getting digitally delivered, most of these services. And therefore, even if there are conflicts or there are some other logistics constraints, services sector is one sector which is very, very resilient in that form. And India has rightly focused on the services sector, because services sector is also highly labor intensive. It requires a lot of young people to work on various elements of that. We have abundance in our young workforce. And if you look at India's rank, now in 2001 we were hardly 24th, and now we rank 7th in terms of the services rank in the world. And in fact, if you look at the way services are growing in the rest of the world, we are growing faster than the rest. In fact, that is also true of merchandise, but it is much more true of services. If you look at the services share in India's export basket, you will find that services share has moved from 32.6% in just a decade back in 2013-14 to 43.8% in 2023-24. So the way we are growing in services, I'm very sure that we'll be reaching $1 trillion of services trade by 2030, which is our target. And if you look at exports of computer software, which you mentioned, IT-enabled services and business process outsourcing, that has grown by 12.2%, and it has reached about $193 billion. So this is a very good growth story for us, the services sector, and the efforts which India is making in terms of the domestic policy, in terms of domestic capability building for the services sector, that is also immense. The programs like Digital India, the Startup India, and the whole focus on the digital public infrastructure. If you look at the digital public infrastructure in India, that is appreciated across the world. A lot of countries are interested in building partnership with us. We have moved to our neighboring countries in terms of helping them out to move towards a digital public infrastructure. And as the digital public infrastructure grows across the world, the digitally delivered services will also grow. And India is going to benefit immensely from this growth in the digitally delivered services. Of course, if you look at services, it is just not the IT and ITS. The services also involves, the professional services, the business services, the maritime services, and now these days, the environmental services, accounting, financing, tourism. And the audiovisual sector is also growing a lot, audiovisual and gaming sector. So some of these services sector, we are conscious of the fact that these sectors are going to grow. In fact, let me tell you one very important thing here, that when we talk about our strategy for growth and trade, we are looking at the global demand. We are not just looking at the domestic demand. We are looking at the global demand for these services. And we feel that if you look at the global demand of these services, focus on these. In fact, we are now focusing on certain subsectors within the services, where we feel that if we are able to match and are able to utilize this potential, we will be able to move much ahead in terms of the services sector. And we are building these components in our FTAs. Therefore, there is a huge focus now on services sector in our free trade agreements. So I'm sure that the services sector is going to be a very great, large engine of growth for our country in terms of not only overall GDP growth, but also in terms of the export growth. Thank you.
Sunil, obviously you painted a very good picture for services. Can I ask you to paint a similar picture as to what is going to happen in manufacturing? You said you also want to get to $1 trillion in manufacturing exports. So what industries and what areas do you see India's growth in manufacturing exports?
So Adil, you're right. India cannot grow both in terms of GDP as well as in terms of exports unless and until we also focus on manufacturing. And we also realize one very important fact, that manufacturing is also important from point of view of providing huge rural employment across the whole country. And we also realize that manufacturing has to improve in this country. We are also looking at, in fact, if you look at the recent policy pronouncements which have been made by our Prime Minister about Make in India, and you will find that another important element is that it is just not Make in India, it is also Make for the world. So we have realized one very important fact, that if you can look at the global demand, you work in the global value chains, identify your strengths, as we have identified in electronics, we have identified in pharma sector, we have identified in chemicals, and we are looking at moving into the value chains. Maybe in manufacturing, we will start from the assembly segment of the value chain, what we did in electronics and mobile phones. But then gradually we will move to manufacturing of those components. And when we look at manufacturing of these components or the other part of the value chain, the intermediate products, so to say, we are looking at not what is the scale which is required to reach the domestic demand. We are looking at how we can fulfill the global demand for those particular kind of products, for those kind of intermediates. So in manufacturing, if you look at our approach is twofold. One, of course, is that to reduce dependencies on few geographies. And when we say make in India, we also say it from the point of view that can we reduce those dependencies? And there, this whole PLI schemes come into the picture, that where we are focusing on 14 important sectors. We are looking at what are the intermediate products. For example, in pharma, the whole API is being imported. We are dependent on very few geographies. Similarly, in semiconductor, in the solar panels, in the automobile, if it moves to battery making. So India's focus in manufacturing is also to look at the emerging technologies and how to bring those emerging technologies into the country so that we are not dependent on few geographies. And that is how, the whole concept of integration with the world, with Europe, with the US, and with the other friendly countries is coming out. And we will be focusing on some of these products in terms of reducing our import dependencies. But at the same time, we are also looking at what is the global scale which we can reach. Because unless and until you make at the global level, you cannot reach that optimum economies of scale. And unless and until you reach that optimum economies of scale, you cannot be competitive in the world. So today, if you have to be competitive in the world, you have to reach that economies of scale. So our manufacturing ecosystem, we are looking at industrial parks. We are looking at freeing the SEZs for, to reach their higher potential. And we are looking at creating an infrastructure system within the country in terms of the industrial networks, industrial parks, and industrial corridors, so that these industrial setups are linked to each other. And let me also tell you that we are also very much focused that in this industrialization, because it is gearing towards more of technology-oriented kind of manufacturing, because of the very nature of the energy transition. We are also not oblivious to the fact that Indian MSMEs can play a very, very important role. If you look at our current exports, Indian MSMEs contribute up to 50%. And we feel that Indian MSMEs, not only in terms of, building up the startup ecosystem, but also, looking at those gaps in the global supply chains run by the MNCs, where Indian MSMEs can come out with innovative solutions. In fact, when we were looking at this whole EV vehicle manufacturing in India, and we were looking at the charging stations, I'm very glad to say that a lot of MSMEs are coming out with these concepts of creating a very small scale, but at the same time cost effective and scalable kind of technologies for charging stations. So in this whole striving for the manufacturing prowess, because I understand that exports are only an extension of your manufacturing and services production prowess. It is, if you are able to produce your manufacturing and services at competitive rates globally, then only you can export. So what I feel that we are taking several steps, and we are poised for this manufacturing growth. And I feel that this scale economies and the futuristic, move towards integration into the higher end of the value chain is going to help us look at exports in a bigger manner. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunil. I want to ask my last question is, as you look forward over the next 10 years, how do you see India's policies changing so that it becomes a bigger, so that exports grow and we become a bigger part of the global trade flows?
So Adil, yes, in fact, this is the phase when we are looking at Viksit Bharat. We are looking at our, both industry as well as services sector to grow in terms of competitiveness. It acquires that scale. We are also looking at what is our resource abundance in terms of STEM professionals, our resource abundance in terms of we are able to supply, our human resources, which are now highly capable. We are focusing on their skill development. We are focusing in terms of looking at the skill shortages elsewhere. In fact, now we are looking at the MRAs where our people can, their qualifications are recognized across the world, and they are as mobile as anybody. And we are looking at, where our strengths lie. And what I feel that demographic dividend is one very important area where our strength lies. And if this demographic dividend can be harnessed in terms of, giving them better education, in terms of their digital orientation, their aptitude towards dealing with the digital world, their aptitude to take advantage from the AI world which is coming up, their approach towards these new technologies, their orientation towards these new technologies, and their mind application towards these new technologies in terms of both R&D, innovation, designing. If you look at manufacturing, large manufacturing is now, there is a servicification component of manufacturing, and the servicification component of manufacturing starts from the R&D. It starts from developing new products, and after the product is made, it gets into the marketing, the branding, the distribution, the sale, etc., etc. In fact, in many companies, it is close to 50%, the servicification part. So I think that part should also be looked at. And for this, in fact, we are creating an enabling atmosphere, because what we feel that our people are industrious. They have a global outlook. In fact, Indians have a good global outlook, because whenever we study, we have been studying about the whole world. We just don't study about our own country alone. And we are much more globally oriented. So you will find that our people are not only industrious, but they are also forward looking, they are ambitious, and they want to go around the world. So what I feel that, our whole ecosystem has to be geared up in that direction. We still feel that many people can get into export business or import business or trade business, but they are not able to do so because they don't have the trade intelligence available with them. And we are focusing on some of these portals where, like e-connect portal, like e-commerce portal, like trade intelligence portal, where we feel that we will be able to disseminate information about the trade conditions, about the tariff conditions, about the standard conditions of different countries, so that we can capture new markets with new products. In fact, recently, I can say that our lot of products we have, for the first time, they have moved to new countries. Many new products are coming up. In fact, so far, if you look at our export policy, it was only driven by the central government. But now central government has initiated this discussion with the state governments. Now we are looking at state export plans. We are developing the district export plans. We are looking at making district as export hubs, and we are trying to see that the local products, the vocal for local and local goes global. That is the mantra which has been given by the Honorable Prime Minister. So the point here is that many times our products which are made locally are not being sold internationally because those small producers do not have that wherewithal to do so. We are looking at e-commerce exports as a major way of building opportunities for these small producers, particularly the micro segment of the MSME. We are saying that if they can get opportunities, in handicrafts, you can make individualized products, which are in accordance with the individualized taste of the buyers in the Western world. And we feel that these micro producers can integrate with the global system, with the e-commerce export hubs, which we have announced and where we are working upon. So we are now more focused this time, particularly when we are visioning the Viksit Bharat. We are now also focusing on where we feel that those are the countries where the world demand is going to come up. So now, as a strategy, Department of Commerce is looking at these 20 countries of focus, which contribute to almost 65% of the global imports from the rest of the world. And we are also focusing on 6 manufacturing sectors where we feel that majority of the demand is going to come in the world, whether it is engineering, pharma, chemicals, textiles, agri-processing. We are also focusing on 6 services sectors other than IT, ITS, which is the professional and business services, the maritime services, the tourism is a huge sector where there are huge opportunities, and we are focusing on tourism. Audio-visual, that is another sector where Indian mind is geared to. They are good at designing, they are good at animation, and this can be a sector of potential growth. And of course, the health and education, that part of health and education which can be digitally delivered. So we are looking at, we have seen during COVID period that telemedicine became a good way of dealing with things, because many could not go to hospitals, could not meet doctors physically. And I think telemedicine and tele-education is going to be a good way of exporting our services. And we are working in that direction. So our whole focus is coming from strengthening these. Secondly, I would also say that we are also looking at certain geographies and trying to see that how we can export to them more. We also feel that Africa is going to be an emerging area where there will be a huge demand which will be coming up in the future years when we look at 2047. And we are working with the UAE government, and we are coming up with this concept of Bharat Mart, where our products will be displayed in this area, which is close to Jebel Ali free zone area. And uh, our exporters will be able to look at markets towards the west, and this can become uh, an area where not only we will be providing warehousing facilities, but also showcasing our products to the African countries and to the other countries in the Gulf. And we are also trying to look at how we can build an Africa Setu, where we can have better linkage with Africa. And at the same time, we are also looking at how we can improve the infrastructure within the states and their orientation towards exports, as I was talking about, that in terms of uh, local goes global, so that uh, people at large are able to get associated with commerce. Commerce to them should not look a very, very complex kind of a business. Perhaps, many of our youth, they feel that doing, this trade business is very, very risky. It requires a lot of credit. It requires a lot of uncertainties. It is a difficult work to do. So we are also trying to look at that how we can demystify the commerce as a word, and how we can attract more youth towards commerce. And therefore, what I mentioned, these kind of different portals, which will provide not only ease of doing business, but also market intelligence to many of our emerging exporters, the new exporters, the exporters who are looking it as a way of doing business. And I feel that this orientation, that people can do commerce easily, they can get credit easily. In fact, I did not touch upon the credit aspect, but we are also looking at how to facilitate through Exim Bank as well as through ECGC in terms of insurance as well as credit mechanism, so that more people get oriented towards doing business, and more youth, not only from the urban centers but also from the rural areas, the MSMEs and the micro enterprises, they can get integrated with the global trade. So that is our vision, and I hope that everybody will put their heads together to see that we are able to reach that vision. But thank you so much for giving putting this question to me, because this is a very, very important question. Thank you.
Sunil, thank you very much. And I think you've answered a lot of questions. I'd like to close on and one, thanking you, and saying that you sound like you're very excited about reaching $2 trillion in exports and making India into a very successful integration into the global economy. So Sunil, thank you very much for taking time to spend with us and for elucidating for a large number of people what is India's trade position and trade policy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adil, for giving this opportunity. And I really thank you from the bottom of my heart. And I think you are doing a wonderful job by disseminating such kind of talks to everybody, and in a very democratic manner. So thank you so much.
Thanks.